Auburn's lineup for SEC Media Days is set. Who is Hugh Freeze taking to Atlanta? Welcome on into the Auburn Express, powered by the War Report. I'm your host, Mike G, and thank you so much for turning us up and turning us on a Wednesday morning. Joining me, as he always does every single Wednesday morning, is my good friend, Thrift Behringer, show host and owner over at Georgia Alabama Sports Live. Please go check them out. Thrift, on today's show, we're talking about SEC Media Days, which starts next Monday. Auburn is on Tuesday. Coach Hugh Freeze will take the stage, and we will hear from player representatives, center Connor Lew, defensive end, Keldrick Falk, and quarterback Jackson Arnold. Now, they're taking a quarterback, which means that's the starter. We all knew Jackson Arnold was going to be the starter, but there are coaches in a position where they cannot take a quarterback to SEC Media Days. That's not Auburn. They feel like they have their guy. I want to start at the top with Jackson Arnold. Hugh Freeze has overly expressed confidence in Jackson Arnold and his abilities. He said to me personally, I thought he was a freak in high school. I still think he's a freak athlete now, and He thinks that he will be a freak athlete at Auburn for the next couple of years.
Yeah, Mike, I completely agree with you, man. I think this is a good sign for all Auburn fans out there. The fact that Jackson Arnold got picked and he's never even played a game at Auburn shows you the confidence that Hugh Freeze has in him. Now, albeit I think it is kind of almost forced confidence because he has nowhere other option and he needs Jackson Arnold to be successful. But I'm going to look at this positively. I just made up a word right there, but I'm going to look at this and the positive aspect, not the negative, thinking that this is a good sign. Maybe he's showing leadership qualities. Maybe he's starting to gain and gauge the locker room and getting the confidence of the locker room. I'm going to take it as a positive, Mike, that Jackson Arnold, not even starting a game, is the guy that Hugh Freeze chose to speak on behalf of Auburn.
Yeah, look, the stories were clear this offseason. He skipped the Manning Passing Academy to build chemistry with his wide receivers. That was a decision that Hugh Freeze left up to Jackson Arnold. Said he called Archie Manning and said, look, man, I know you guys want Jackson there, but this is a decision that he's made. I support it. And for all intents and purposes, the receivers that I've talked to said he's slaying it. I can't wait. During A-Day, we saw Deuce Knight and the chemistry he had with Perry Thompson and some other receivers out there. But Cam Coleman is going to be a star this year. Eric Singleton Jr., we're hearing, has 4.2 speed. They're already talking about his speed, putting him in the first round of the NFL draft. You've got Horatio Fields, who transferred in from Wake Forest. You've got Malcolm Simmons, who was a budding star last year. According to Hugh Freeze, he's a year more experienced, going 200 miles an hour, but doing the right thing, running the right routes on assignment this year. If you're Jackson Arnold, you have an embarrassment of riches at wide receiver. And they feel like with the catch radius that these receivers have, all he has to do is go out there and get it close, and these guys are going to make plays.
Exactly right, man. And the fact is, he's a playmaker. And when you got guys around him that can make plays with him, that's going to make Jackson Arnold even more lethal, man. But, more than the talent, more than the fact that he has a good offensive line, more than the fact that how's the play calling going to be, I love the leadership part, Mike. It's something that I think Auburn's lacked at the quarterback position for a while. That was not Jared Stidham. He wasn't a rah-rah, hoo-hoo. Bo Nix, I never really felt got the reins to be that leader. That's why he transferred. I truly believe, and nothing against Peyton Thorne, but Jackson Arnold's going to gauge that room a lot better than Peyton Thorne just because of the athlete he is. And then on top of it, they respect him too. I think this is only going to be positive, man. So I can't wait to ask some questions, see how he comes in with confidence, how he articulates himself. And again, all these things are nuances that have nothing to do with what's going to happen on the field, but it gives good conversation. I can't wait to see Jackson Arnold next week.
Keldrick Falk was chosen to go as well. Before we get to our commercial break here, look, he is a guy that I have said has been disrespected in a lot of this preseason all SEC talk. I expect him to have double-digit sacks this year. Keldrick Falk is an absolute dude. I think he's going to prove it this year. They have stacked the deck. Auburn has had very little turnover thrift on this roster. As a matter of fact, in a recent conversation that I had with AD John Cohen, he pointed to the fact that Auburn is just not, they haven't lost a lot. Everyone's freaking out over Auburn's recruiting ranking. But the truth is, when you look at what they've done in terms of bringing in a top 10 class last year with kids from that class making an actual impact, you've got a young but talented team, and Keldrick Falk is at the center of that, man. You know, if you have a guy who's getting after the quarterback like I expect him to this year, that defense is going to be scary good.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think there's a very clear message being sent by Hugh Freeze. He knows, and everyone else knows, there's a lot of young talent. This guy's only a sophomore and 19 years old, Mike. There's not one upperclassman going. He did not pick one senior. And I don't think this has anything to do against the seniors. I think he's more sending a message is, I have a lot of young talent. We are coming. Y'all better recognize, and this is going to be a big season for Auburn. So I love the fact that he brought the quarterback, the most important position. Aside from that, how do you win championships, Mike? On the offensive and defensive line. And what did he bring? An offense and defensive lineman, and who I think have a lot of talent. So I love Keldrick Falk too. I'm with you. I think he could be similar to, remember, Carl Alston, a guy that can just wreak havoc in the backfield. I think he can do there's been a myriad of guys, but Lawson's just the one that comes off the top of my head right now over the last several years that have been dominant. Montrevious Adams, I know he's more inside, but you get it. We've had great defensive linemen over the years, and I think he's going to be the next one coming from Auburn.
Keldrick Falk had the sixth most snaps played on defense last year, 591 snaps, behind Jalen McLeod, Caleb Harris, Dorian Mossey, Kayan Lee, and Jaron Thompson. He's going to be a dude. He's going to be a dude. He turned in last year 9 sacks. Again, I think he'll easily be in double figures, but he also had 5 hits and 31 hurries on the quarterback, 35 tackles, 11 of them assisted. But Keldrick Falk, an absolute monster of a player that Auburn has on their hands. Now, you said something I thought was really important about, games in the SEC are won and lost in the trenches. So taking an offensive and a defensive lineman says a lot about where you feel like your team is at in those two areas. Auburn lost guys like Jason Jones on that defensive line, guys who maybe not flashy with a bunch of stats, but he was a solid leader who played good football. They feel like they're younger, but they're also more talented, I believe, this year than last year. As a matter of fact, I think this is one of the more talented teams that Auburn has had in the last 20 years, if not the most talented.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I don't know if I'm actually, you know what, from top to bottom and overall, I'm talking about if they hit their maximum potential, I think you're right, Mike. I think this team, depth-wise too, is one of the deeper teams Auburn's had in quite some time. So I think that 2017 team was pretty loaded, man. 2019 had a bunch of first-rounders on the defensive side. But I do love this talent. I do love the message, again, that you just alluded to, having strong offense and defensive linemen. And the name I was looking for was Jeff Holland, by the way. Carl Lawson and Jeff Holland. Both those guys ended up leading the SEC in sacks during their senior seasons. I can see that with Keldrick Falk. Yeah, exactly. So I'm with you, man. I think this Auburn team is full of talent. The quarterback position has had its most talented player in quite some time. I'm even going back to maybe Nick Marshall and maybe even Cam Newton. I think this guy's more talented than a Jared Stidham and a Bo Nix if he is put in the right position to succeed. So I love the message that Hugh Freeze is sending, bringing these guys.
I do too. Like I said, this fantastic conversation. These are good conversations to have, Thrift, if you are in Hugh Freeze's position here in year 3. Look, years 1 and 2 did not go the way they planned. As a matter of fact, they went about as bad as you could possibly think, but they feel like they're close. They felt like they were a couple kicks away from something really special. And I don't necessarily disagree with that. I think that they were just a couple kicks away from something special last year. But those aren't the only 2 guys going to SEC media days. They've got a very important piece on offense on the other side of that line I want to talk to about right after a quick word from our sponsors. This episode of the Auburn Express is brought to you by our friends at the Vibe Vault. You can find them at 3462 Crosswinds Road, Suite E in Phoenix City, Alabama. That's right across the street from the Chattahoochee Valley Community College, next to Renfro's Supermarket and Marco's Pizza. The Vibe Vault. If you're in the Columbus, Phoenix City area and you're looking to get fresh for the weekend, get fresh for the weekend with the Vibe Vault. Not just barbers, lifestyle consultants. This episode of the War Report is brought to you by our friends at the Rogue Shop. Visit rogueshop.com. Use code REPORT to get 15% off your Rogue Shop order. Pain, sleep, stress, anxiety, whatever ails you in life, the Rogue Shop has something that has you covered. They got all your herbal medicinal needs there. I use the sleep gummies, and I get a great night's sleep. Going to be out here in about 30 minutes, thanks to the Rogue Shop Thrift. Also, want to thank our friends at Golden's Cast Iron. Visit goldenscastiron.com/WR. Use code Get Your Weight Up for 15% off your weights and code TWR for $65 off fire pits and Kamado grills. Summer is here. You want to be outside with your family next to the grill, grilling and chilling, or staying in shape with some Golden's Cast Iron weights. Work out, grill out, chill out with Golden's Cast Iron. Connor Lew, your center, your second quarterback on the field. I feel like people don't understand what an important role the center plays sometimes in directing an offense. He is in his second year, a true sophomore, anchoring this offensive line. I think he's a future draft pick that Auburn has on their hands. Look, Connor, I mentioned in the first half of the show, Auburn is loaded with talent, but they are also very, very young threat. And this is a good position to be in. I think it's affected recruiting to some extent when you start to look at the long-term outlook of this team and guys say, wait, you got all these top 50 receivers here, these top 150 guys here. If I come in and Cam Coleman's not gone for another 2 seasons, we're not going to see the field at wideout. You're not. You know, he's not going to be draft eligible until after the 2026 season. I believe he's out of here because I think he's that talented. But that's 2 years that you may have to sit the bench behind that guy. And they seem to be having no problem going out to the portal and finding the next wide receiver stud. Last year it was Keandre Lambert-Smith. This year it's potentially Eric Singleton Jr. But you got Connor Lew in there. And offensive line is such a developmental position physically. So when you come in, very few guys are physically ready to play ball down in the trenches at an SEC caliber level. I think it says a lot for Connor Lew that he's in this position firmly as a sophomore.
I completely agree with you, man. Had a great freshman year, was a freshman All-American according to 247. Pro Football Focus had a freshman All-America. He was a freshman of the week multiple times. I think he was fantastic in 2023. 2024, I think he had a decent year, building off of 2023 when he really opened some eyes. I think this is the year that he could maybe win the Remington. I think he is our best center since Reese Dismukes going back to 2014, 2013, 2014. And remember how important he was to our success running the football during that time period and how smart he was as a center. And in those 2 years, many people thought he was the best center in the country. I think this guy has that capability. And when you have that on the offensive line with a playmaker at quarterback in Jackson Arnold, I'm telling you, the more and more research I do, and by the way, God's Bible for college football, brainiacs like us came out. That's Phil Steele magazine. I'm sorry, I gotta plug that, man, because I've had that and I've got that magazine for the last 15 years. There's a lot of great stuff in it. And when I looked at Auburn's roster, it's too deep. I could not find any weaknesses, Mike. So I just don't see it. And I think with bringing Connor Lew, you bring in a guy in Falk that you think can be the dominant guy on the defensive side with Jackson Arnold. I don't know how many people are having Auburn so low other than the SEC's just loaded next year. But I think Hugh Freeze and his roster is a little bit underrated compared to everyone else and the way everyone is thinking outside of the Auburn market.
Well, that's where I kind of want to go next, right? Like when you look at Connor Lee and what he is to Auburn and, expectations on the season, a lot of it, Thrift, is anchored in what the first 2 years were. You cannot escape the results on the field. So you have a lot of people who say, while Auburn is supremely talented, I'm going to wait and see as far as what if they realize their potential. Now, where Hugh Freeze is going to get a lot of questions is going, and rightfully so, is going to be quarterback development. Yeah. They picked Peyton Thorne, and for all intents and purposes, for year one, he got worse than he was at Michigan State. He kind of returned to form, at least statistically, but I don't think that Peyton Thorne was the issue with this offense. And the question that's going to be asked at media days and beyond is, does this staff know what to do with quarterbacks? And is Jackson Arnold going to be the guy that saves you? Do they feel like he's so good that he can overcome the communication issues we saw between Peyton Thorne and Hugh Freeze? Come on, man. Some of that stuff was flat out embarrassing.
It was.
Fourth and short at Georgia at midfield with a chance to make it a one-score game. And the coach is saying, I called a halfback dive left. And the player is saying, I told you that crap wasn't going to work last week. You can't have that.
No.
You cannot have that this year. And I think that that's on Hugh Freeze. I think he understands that. He said as much in our one-on-one interview. But if we're talking about expectations for the season, Thrift, I got to think that there's going to be a lot of questions on Hugh Freeze, because this, make no mistake, this is on him. The so-called QB whisperer, if Jackson Arnold does not play well. I can't see it. You can't, another five-star player, I can't see that Auburn is the place where five-star QBs go to die.
No, it can't be, man. And I'm almost thinking at some point, either Auburn is cursed in that regard and getting 5 stars that don't turn into. I'm not just talking about the quarterback position. I'm talking about just in general. I think there's been more frequent cases of 5 stars that have almost been bust, especially at the receiver position, than have been successful over the years. And maybe we can get out of that mantra now with Cam Coleman. Jackson Arnold. Maybe we can get away from that. And a lot of it has to do with not the guy's potential, because he was a 5-star coming out of high school. You got to develop him. And I'm hoping now, if Hugh Freeze is believing in Jackson Arnold so much that he's not played one game, didn't even participate in spring, that this guy is not only your starter, he's your leader, your captain, and the face of the program when you head to SEC Media Days, makes me think they're on that same wavelength that you and I both question. Are they going to be on the same page, unlike what we've seen with Peyton Thorne the last 2 years? Early indications here in the offseason says yes.
Yeah, I agree. Look, Auburn's going to surprise a lot of people this year on the field. Yeah. That's just my feeling. But I don't think that it's subjective that they are extremely talented. I think it is objective. They are objectively a very talented football team. The question is, and will continue to be, does this staff know what to do with the abundance of talent? Now, we know that DJ Durkin knows what to do with the talent on the defensive side of the ball. Those guys were monsters last year. They were all-time levels of bad on third down defense, but again, they've upgraded in a lot of ways, so I think that we'll see improvement there. And they kept Auburn in a lot of games. You can point to the third down defense, but nobody ran away from Auburn last year offensively. It just didn't happen. The closest was Georgia at 31 points, but they held almost every other opponent outside of that crazy 4-OT game with Texas A&M under that 31-point mark. So Auburn was losing games because they could barely manage 14 points offensively. And that's just, in today's college football, that's just too tall a task to ask your defense to hold the other team under 14 points.
Not
you
in today's
can accidentally score 7.
Yeah.
Right? So
when Alabama and Nick Saban, and especially the last 5 years of his career, was happy with giving up between 17 to 20 points a game because his teams were also scoring over 40, you know that you're not going to get under 14. That's some historic stuff. That's some Kirby Smart type Georgia defense. We don't have that right now, and you don't have to have that to win a national championship. Even look at Ohio State last year. No one's given up less than 13, 12 points a game anymore. It's just not in today's climate and how today's football is being played. So I'm with you on that in that regard, Mike.
Look, it's going to be fun watching it. It's going to be even more fun getting to ask Hugh Freeze these questions next week at SEC Media Days. Thrift Behringer, you know the routine. Before we get out of here, tell people where they can find you.
Man, I cannot wait to be in the Atlanta area next week with you, Mike G, Ike, and the rest of the crew. We're going to have a ton of fun and covering everything that the SEC Media Days has to offer. Top-notch organization, top-notch event. Can't wait to be there. Georgia Alabama Sports Live, Facebook, and YouTube. We cover all things high school and college around the state of Georgia and Alabama. And, of course, the Sports Visions Morning Show. You can listen every weekday morning from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. on Sports Vision 92.1 FM with me and DJ Jones. Mike, thank you so much. Can't wait to see you next week, man.
Guys, that's it for another great edition of the Auburn Express. Do us a favor, if you're in the comments after the video, smash that super thanks button. Show us some love as we travel around the country covering Auburn sports like no other. We need your support. You can help us out by smashing that super thanks button. You guys know the deal. Like and subscribe on the channel. We are on the race to be the most watched Auburn channel out there, and you can help us get there by smashing that subscribe button. Make sure you hit like, drop a comment. We're here bringing you guys some of the best coverage you'll get, especially coming out of SEC Media Days. Thrift. Nobody does more SEC Media Days content than the War Report. We'll continue that tradition this year. We'll catch you guys tomorrow on another great edition of the Auburn Express.